So say hello to the peoples on YouTubes, everybody. Give a nice little digital wave. We were able to compile, with some help from our friends over at Gerwick.net, the average rating for Impact Wrestling, Monday Night Raw, and Smackdown in 2012.
Smells like Fritos over there.
Doug, you hate Nielsen Media Research. Explain, if you had to, if someone goes, I don't listen to the show on a regular basis, why does Doug hate Nielsen Media Research? What would you say?
Doug hates Nielsen Media Research because they suffer from sample bias.
Okay.
Is what they suffer from. They believe that there are 200 million people watching TVs, but they only sample 30,000.
There you go. So follow along with the link here. And let's start first with Impact. Now, we not only got the average for 2012, we also went back and got the averages going all the way back to 2006. Now, the show did debut in October of 2005, but 2006 was the full year, the first year on record of that show airing.
It's the six-sided ring.
The show this year averaged a 1.01 cable rating. This is down from the 1.17 cable rating the show averaged last year in 2000, or 2 years ago rather, in 2011.
Oh, that's at least a 1.
Now, they had two big changes this year. The first one was that they moved the show to a different time slot to 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern. And starting on the 31st of May, they started going live pretty much every week. There were a couple weeks where they had a tape. But they made some fairly significant changes with the show this year. But look at the averages for the show, going all the way back to 2006. 2010, they do a 1.06. 2009, they do a 1.14. 2008, they do a 1.06. 2007, they do a 1.04. And 2006, the first full year they have on record, they do a 0.89, which is back when they were on Saturdays, before they moved to Thursdays. I think they moved to Thursdays in late 2006 when Kurt Angle debuted. But you saw an uptrend for about, what would you say, Doug, 4 years there?
Yeah, they were slow. They were increasing for 4 years, from 06 to 09. Yeah, there's an increase.
And you see a dip in 2010, which, interestingly enough, was with the year that Hogan and Bischoff and everybody came in.
Who'd have thunk that?
And then the following year, they see a little bit of an uptick up to a 1.17, which is their best year ever. And then it goes right back down again this year. Well, I'm sorry, last year. I'm still thinking 2012. But what does that say about this show? I mean, to some people, the people find positive in a lot of things. You know, some people say, well, they've never really lost their audience dramatically. They've ever gone to, a full point or things like that. At least the silver lining for a lot of people with TNA was that they've been able to maintain their audience for the better part of, 6-7 years now. But they've also been unable to really grow it massively either at the same time. But it's also Spike TV standards, so, it is what it is with that show. Mm-hmm. But they're down last year, 2012. Now let's look at SmackDown here. This is where Hunter may actually find this a little interesting. SmackDown this in 2012 averages a 1.89 rating. This is down from 1.95 in 2011. 2010 was the year they moved to cable late in October. So, we went back all the way to 2000 when the show had its first full year, but from 2000 until 2010 they were on broadcast television, so they measure audiences much differently than they do on cable. So I don't know how deep you want to dig into these numbers and these figures. I mean, Hunter, I know you've had your thoughts on this show and the decline on broadcast. I mean, they had a lot of battles with, UPN and then moving to the CW and then moving to My Network TV. Should we just be looking at them on cable the last couple of years and just kind of judge from there? From 2011 on, is that fair? Maybe just because it's become a cable show.
Yeah, I would.
Used to be syndicated, but look at the numbers though. I mean, this was a show on broadcast that was doing in the 4s back in 2000, dips into the 3s and 2s as you get through 2006 and 7, and they got as low as a 194 on broadcast in 2009, and actually, that's pretty low on broadcast television. Granted, the penetration of a My Network TV isn't as big as some other syndicated networks.
Oh, you said penetration.
I did. 195 is what they averaged last year, and they're down to 189. So you have a ratings downturn for TNA in 2012 and a ratings downturn for SmackDown. Here's where I think it gets really interesting. Look at the averages here for Raw. And this is a show that's always been on cable television, never had a jump back and forth. The only massive thing that they've experienced is going to Spike TV for 5 years. Sure. Which is in just about as many homes as USA. They're in a couple million homes less maybe than USA. I think the last estimate though had it pretty close, neck and neck in terms of how many people get it. Look at where this show is at. Now, granted, the system has changed quite a bit. You know, more. I mean, you would think that now people have more televisions in their homes than they did maybe in 1998.
They got a lot more stuff too.
But look at where the ratings were at in 98. 4.35. 99, 5.90. 2000, 5.88. 2001, 4.64. They start to dip into the threes in 2003. They do a 3.76 in 2003, a 3.67 in 2004. They see an uptick in 2005 when they go back to the USA Network doing a 3.81. They see a slight increase the following year in 06 with a 3.9. And then pretty much from, what would you say here, from 2010 on, you're seeing a pretty sharp downturn. And a lot of people are going to have the PG argument here. So just get ready for that. The 2009 average was a 3.57. The 2010 average was a 3.28. The 2011 average was a 3.21, and the average this year was a 2.99, so almost a 3 basically, if you average it. But the big change this year was mid-year in July, moving to the 3-hour format. Mm-hmm. I averaged how many viewers they did over 24 weeks of the new 3-hour format, and that was 4.07 million viewers. That doesn't sound awful. It's like a double-edged sword here. Because, okay, for instance, Hunter, if I tell you your show on Monday night over the course of 24 weeks, moving it from a 2-hour time slot to a 3-hour time slot, was averaging over 4 million viewers, would you be worried?
No, you need context.
But if you look at the rating average of your show over the last 10, 12 years here, and you start at a 4.3 back in 98 and you're down to a 2.99 in 2012, does that concern you?
I'll put it to you better, Hunter. On your network you're on right now, you started in 06 on a 3.9. You have now dropped here in 2011 to a 3.21. Is switching to a 3-hour format required?
Is it required that I do it?
Yeah, I mean, should you do that in order to grab more viewers?
Again, context. Are more people watching closer to the hour that you're looking to add? Mm-hmm. You know, or is it at the end? Is it there in the overrun? You know, regardless of what numbers are doing, you need to have context in order to put any kind of meaning behind them.
But you see how easy this is, though, to put these figures together and throw up a graphic. And if you have the graphic up here, the show is on a downturn.
It's in trouble. Yeah, it looks like it's in trouble. But, I mean, numbers without context are meaningless. I mean, The number of television networks has increased by 8% every year since 1990. I mean, we're over – I mean, the average household right now has 75 to 90 channels. The average household.
Used to be only 40 or 50.
It wasn't even that. In 1998, you know how many my house had? About 28.
Yeah.
That's
basic.
Just to give you, and I think I've used this before, but what's really interesting, there's a book out there called Punk Marketing, which is fantastic. If anybody's interested in marketing or any kind of advertising or mobile or anything like that, it's starting to become a little dated as things get now, but it was back in, I think, 07 or 08 they produced this book, right? And they had this really fascinating thing that they talked about where they said back in 1996, if you had advertised a product and you had ran it on 2 different networks, on one network and one cable channel, 3 hours apart in the evening, you'd probably hit something like 30% of the American, if you ran it 3 times in an evening on one network, TV network, like CBS, NBC, Fox, and then one of the cable channels 3 times, you would get something like 60% of cable viewers, chances were. Now, if you did that on 20 different networks 3 times simultaneously at the same time, every night for a week, you wouldn't get 8%.
It's a different landscape.
I mean, it's not. I mean, there's so many networks now, and the other thing that's happening too is that we're becoming less exploratory as a culture, which I think is damaging as a whole. I mean, we're becoming much more niche. I mean, we see it in politics. Liberals listen to liberal commentators. Conservatives listen to conservative commentators. If you're an NFL fan, you watch the NFL network, and then you go to your networks to watch your nationally televised games. If you're a baseball fan, you live off the team's network that's local, like a NESN or a YES network, MLB network, and maybe one of the channels that are broadcasting your team's game on a national broadcast that's gotten blacked out. That's what you're watching. Food Network people, people that are into cooking. My wife watches maybe 5 channels. All of them are things that she's into. Does my wife watch the news? Fuck no. My wife watches Food Network, Cooking Channel, the Odd Freak Show on the Learning Channel, and she watches HBO with me. That's what she watches. And so now, especially with the internet, we go to the places that we like. We are a wrestling website. We're not a fight sports website. We are a professional wrestling website. People that are interested in professional wrestling, this is a community for them. They come here. Some people spend incredible amounts of time here. That's how we are now. Wrestling, we very rarely explore those 3rd, 4th things that we like or get excited. People, the depth of their interests, I don't find to be nearly as deep as they used to be. And in some ways that's a good thing because I think we have more subject matter experts now, certainly. But, I mean, I think about it in my life. I like politics. I like pro wrestling. I like baseball. I have other things that I'm interested in. I like history and, organized crime's always really fascinated me. Like our 1920s organized crime's always been really fascinating to me. And, got ancillary things that excite me. But I'd say an overwhelming amount of my time on the internet, like 95% of the time, is spent at or talking about politics, wrestling, or baseball.
Just a different world.
I like guns. I like other things, but that's what I explore. And I think, viewer behaviors on TV are no different now. We have the things that we like. I mean, I'm not very rarely do I park myself on a show, flipping through the channels. I mean, a lot of people don't understand, and this is something that gets left out of the debate on television ratings as a whole. I mean, we can talk about how ratings are flawed, but if we're talking about the number of eyes that you're catching, first of all, you had a lot fewer channels. That's number one. That's left out. But the one big thing that's left out is a lot of the views and a lot of the eyeballs were people flipping through channels. The average time spent on a wrestling show was about a half hour back in the 1990s because people would either change or they'd come back or they'd just get mesmerized.
Commercial break.
What they were saying.
Find something else and get mesmerized by that and forget to flip back.
Yeah, and that's where a lot of those numbers came from. And the WWE and WCW were extraordinary at gluing your eyeballs to this crazy shit that was happening. And
now you have on demand, you have
DVD, you
streaming.
have DVR. I mean, people just go right to what they want. They don't give a fuck anymore. I mean, I'm not, I don't sit there. Very rarely do I find myself now watching a show and sitting through commercials, so.
It's just a dangerous game to be playing by saying these numbers are trending downward, therefore PG is the problem. I just don't want that to be the simplified.
Well, it's not necessarily the case. Their revenues are up.
I know they've never made
because
more money.
It's allowed them to do other things. I mean, if you're looking at television ratings as a measure for success, and that's it, then yes, you could say they're a failure based on the raw numbers. You could say that, but they make up for that with revenue in other areas where it's more profitable in their business. Mm-hmm. It's as simple as that. If you can make more money on the merchandise side, why are you caring so much about the artistic creativity of your television show? If all your job is to put these characters out there that are interesting to kids so that they'll go buy merchandise, why the fuck do you care that your ratings are through the roof?
Sign up now to become a Wrestleview VIP for only $4.99 per month. Visit VIP.wrestleview.com for more details.